Close your eyes. Picture the silent darkness between the stars, a void so vast that light itself grows weary travelling through it. And now imagine something emerging from that darkness. Not a spacecraft, not a probe sent by curious minds like ours, but something older, something that has been travelling for billions of years, carrying secrets from a stellar system that burned when our sun was not yet born. On July 1st, 2025, astronomers at the ATLAS telescope facility in Chile detected a faint speck of light moving against the backdrop of stars. Within hours, the announcement rippled through the global astronomical community. The third confirmed interstellar object to enter our solar system had arrived. They named it 3IATLAS. But for millions of people around the world, this visitor carries another name, one whispered in conspiracy circles, debated in late-night forums, and etched into ancient tablets thousands of years old. Some believe this is not merely a comet from another star system. They believe this is the return, the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy, the homecoming of the Anunnaki. Before we dive deeper, ignite that like button and prepare for the revelations to come. Tell me in the comments where you are listening from, what time it is there. And as always with our videos, the visuals are here to add context, but they aren't necessary to follow along. Thank you for always having our back. Prepare yourself and let's dive in. The discovery happened in the early hours of July 1st, 2025. The ATLAS telescope system, part of a network designed to detect potentially hazardous asteroids approaching Earth, was conducting its routine scan of the southern sky. ATLAS stands for Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, a NASA-funded project with stations across the globe, all working together to provide humanity with advance warning of cosmic threats. The telescope in Rio Hurtado, Chile, captured a series of images showing a faint object moving at an extraordinary speed. At first, the observations were routine. Space is filled with objects in motion, asteroids tumbling through the inner solar system, comets awakening as they approach the sun's warmth, distant planets making their ancient rounds. But something about this object was different. The computer systems flagged it immediately. The trajectory was wrong, the speed was impossible. Within the first 24 hours, astronomers gathered pre-discovery observations from telescope archives around the world. The Zwicky Transient Facility in California had captured images of the object as early as June 14th. Other ATLAS telescopes had photographed it on June 25th. No one had noticed it initially, because it had been passing directly in front of the dense star fields of the galactic centre, the bright, crowded heart of the Milky Way, where a single faint comet could easily be lost among millions of distant suns. But now, with its trajectory calculated, the truth became undeniable. This object was moving at over 200,000 kilometres per hour. It was on a hyperbolic orbit, meaning it would pass through our solar system once and never return. The eccentricity of its orbit was measured at an astounding 6.14. To understand how extraordinary this number is, you must understand orbital mechanics. An orbit with an eccentricity of 0 is a perfect circle. An eccentricity between 0 and 1 describes an ellipse, the shape of every planet's path around our sun. An eccentricity of exactly 1 is a parabola, an object just barely reaching escape velocity. But an eccentricity greater than 1 means the object is moving so fast that no gravity can hold it. It will escape, and 3IATLAS, with its eccentricity of 6.14, was moving faster than any object ever observed in our solar system. Even Oumuamua, the mysterious first interstellar visitor discovered in 2017, had an eccentricity of only 1.2. Even the second interstellar object, the comet 2I Borisov, discovered in 2019, had reached only 3.36. This new visitor was shattering every record. It was screaming through our solar system at a velocity that defied comprehension. The Minor Planet Center, the official body responsible for designating solar system objects, gave it the interstellar classification 3I, the third interstellar object confirmed by humanity. It was also given the comet designation CEAS-25N1, though that bureaucratic label could never capture what this object truly represented. A visitor from the endless dark, a messenger from another world. Within days of the announcement, follow-up observations began pouring in from observatories around the globe. The Lowell Discovery Telescope in Arizona, the Canada-France-Hawaii Telescope atop Mauna Kea, the Nordic Optical Telescope, and the massive Gran Telescopio Canarias in Spain. Each telescope added crucial data points, refining the orbit, measuring the brightness, analysing the spectrum of light reflected from this cosmic wanderer. The early observations were puzzling. At first, astronomers could not determine if they were looking at an asteroid or a comet. Various observers, including the renowned astronomer Alan Hale, who co-discovered the famous Hale-Bopp comet, reported seeing no cometary features. No coma, the fuzzy cloud of gas and dust that surrounds an active comet. No tail streaming away from the sun. It appeared to be a dark, inert rock tumbling through space. But on July 2nd, everything changed. Observations from 3 different facilities on that single day revealed that 3IATLAS was not dead. It was waking up. A faint coma appeared around the object, a subtle halo of sublimating ice turning directly from solid to gas. A slight elongation was detected, the beginning of a tail forming as the comet released material into the void. David Jewett and Jane Liu, 2 of the world's leading COMT researchers, observed the object with the Nordic Optical Telescope and confirmed it was clearly active, with a diffuse appearance that could mean only one thing. This was not an asteroid. This was a comet, and it was alive. As 3IATLAS drew closer to the Sun, the transformation accelerated. The ice hidden beneath its surface, ice that had been frozen for billions of years in the cold between the stars, began to heat. The solid material sublimated, skipping the liquid phase entirely and turning into gas that erupted from the surface in jets and fountains. By late July, NASA's Hubble Space Telescope captured stunning images of the visitor. The pictures showed a teardrop-shaped cocoon of dust, a glowing shroud surrounding the solid nucleus hidden within. Because Hubble was tracking the fast-moving comet, the background stars appeared as streaks in the exposure, as if the entire universe were rushing past while the comet hung motionless at the centre of the frame. The nucleus itself, the solid heart of the comet, remained hidden beneath the dust and gas. But Hubble's observations allowed astronomers to estimate its size. The upper limit was calculated at 3.5 miles, or 5.6 kilometres in diameter. It could be as small as 440 metres across, roughly the size of 4 football fields placed end to end. But the true size remained uncertain, hidden beneath its veil. The coma surrounding the nucleus had grown to staggering dimensions. High-resolution images from the massive 10.4-metre Gran Telescopio Canarias measured the cloud at 26,400 kilometres by 24,700 kilometres. That's nearly twice the diameter of planet Earth. And this was not even the comet itself, but merely the atmosphere it had created. The breath of ancient ice turned to vapour in the warmth of our sun. Scientists quickly realised that 3IATLAS was chemically different from typical solar system comets. Spectroscopic observations revealed something unexpected. As the comet approached the sun, it showed much higher levels of carbon dioxide than water vapour. Most comets display the opposite pattern. They release water ice as their primary volatile material once they cross a certain threshold of solar heating. But 3IATLAS was different. It was outgassing carbon dioxide long before water became dominant. This suggested that its surface composition was unusual, perhaps formed under different conditions than the icy bodies in our own solar system. The colour of the comet provided additional clues. Observations showed a distinctly reddish hue, similar to what astronomers call D-type asteroids and certain outer solar system objects. This red coloration is believed to be caused by complex organic molecules called tholins, compounds that form when simpler molecules are bombarded by cosmic radiation over millions or billions of years. The presence of tholins suggested that 3IATLAS had spent an immense amount of time in interstellar space, its surface slowly transformed by the relentless radiation that permeates the galaxy. The comet's activity level also puzzled researchers. Dr. Kacheng Jiang at Lowell Observatory noted that the cometary activity seemed delayed compared to typical comets. Most comets begin releasing water vapour rapidly once they reach a certain distance from the sun, causing them to brighten quickly. But 3IATLAS approached much closer to the sun than usual before the outgassing process began in earnest. The object seemed reluctant to wake up, as if it was somehow different from the comets born in our own stellar neighbourhood. Pre-discovery observations from NASA's Transiting Exoplanet Survey satellite, known as TESS, revealed something even more remarkable. The satellite had captured images of 3IATLAS as early as May 7th, 2025, 2 full months before its official discovery. At that time, the comet was roughly 6.4 astronomical units from the Sun, farther than Jupiter, and yet even at that enormous distance 3IATLAS was already showing signs of activity. It had awoken in the cold darkness far beyond the orbit of Mars, something that should not have been possible for a water-ice comet. This early activity strongly suggested that the comet's composition included highly volatile materials, substances that could sublimate even in the frigid outer reaches of the solar system. Carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, perhaps even frozen nitrogen or methane. These are the ices of the outer darkness, the substances that only exist in the coldest regions of space. Their presence on 3IATLAS hinted at a formation environment vastly different from our own solar system. Perhaps this visitor came from a stellar system where planets formed farther from their star, or perhaps its parent system was simply colder, orbiting a dimmer, red dwarf star instead of a sun like ours. Whatever its origin, 3IATLAS carried the chemical fingerprint of an alien world. The trajectory of 3IATLAS told a story that spanned billions of years and countless light-years of space. Astronomers traced its path backward through time, calculating where it had been before encountering our Sun. The comet had not approached from the direction most astronomers expected. Previous theories suggested that interstellar objects should primarily arrive from the solar apex, the direction our Sun is moving relative to nearby stars. If you imagine our solar system as a car driving through space, the solar apex would be the windshield, the direction we are heading. And just as rain appears to come straight at your windshield when you drive through a storm, interstellar objects should preferentially approach from that direction. But 3IATLAS defied this expectation. It arrived from the southern celestial hemisphere, from a direction opposite to the solar apex. It came at us from behind, so to speak, approaching from the general direction of the constellation Sagittarius, where the central bulge of the Milky Way glows with the light of billions of ancient stars. This southern origin was completely unexpected and raised profound questions. Was 3IATLAS simply a rare discovery, a statistical anomaly that happened to approach from an unusual direction, or were southern origin interstellar objects more common than astronomers had previously believed? The velocity data provided additional clues about the comet's deep history. By breaking down its motion into components relative to the galactic coordinate system, astronomers determined that when 3IATLAS arrived at our solar system, it was moving away from the galactic centre with a radial velocity of negative 51 km per second. It was also moving upward through the galactic plane, rising above the thin disk of stars where most of the galaxy's stellar population resides. This motion suggested something remarkable. By tracing its trajectory backward through the gravitational field of the Milky Way, researchers Shokruz Kakarov and Professor Abraham Loeb determined that 3IATLAS likely originated from the thick disk of our galaxy. This component of the Milky Way is populated by older stars, objects that formed when our galaxy was younger, when the universe itself contained fewer heavy elements. The median age they calculated for 3IATLAS was an astounding 4.6 billion years. This made it the oldest of the three known interstellar visitors, older than 2I Borisov, which likely formed around 1.7 billion years ago, older even than Earth itself. 3IATLAS was ancient. It had been wandering the galaxy since before our planet existed, tumbling through the endless dark, passing between the stars, and a silent witness to the slow evolution of the cosmos. For over 4 billion years it had drifted, and now, by pure chance, its path had intersected with ours. It would pass through the inner solar system, swing around our Sun, and then continue its journey back into the void, never to return. A brief encounter that would last only months, a fleeting cosmic handshake between our world and a vista older than stone. The path of 3IATLAS through our solar system was carefully calculated and monitored. When it was first detected on July 1st, the comet was approximately 410 million miles from the Sun, roughly 670 million kilometres within the orbit of Jupiter. But it was racing inward at tremendous speed, pulled by our Sun's gravity into a tighter and tighter curve. On October 30th, 2025, 3IATLAS reached perihelion, its closest approach to the Sun. At that moment, it was 1.35653 astronomical units from our star, roughly 203 million kilometres, or 126 million miles. For perspective, this placed it just inside the orbit of Mars, in the gap between the red planet and Earth. At perihelion, the comet's velocity peaked at an incredible 153,000 miles per hour, 246,000 kilometers per hour as the sun's gravity accelerated it to maximum speed. The passage through perihelion was the most dangerous moment of the comet's journey. The intense solar radiation and heat could have triggered an outburst, a sudden explosive release of gas and dust that would cause the comet to brighten dramatically. Astronomers have observed this behavior in many comets throughout history. Sometimes the nucleus literally explodes, fragmenting into dozens of pieces that continue their journey as independent objects. This happened to Comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 in 1994, which broke into multiple fragments before crashing spectacularly into Jupiter. More recently, Comet Atlas, a different object discovered in 2020, disintegrated completely as it approached the Sun, leaving only a dispersed cloud of debris. Similarly, Comet Ison broke apart in 2013 after astronomers had hoped it might become a brilliant naked-eye object. Instead, it evaporated entirely at perihelion, teaching scientists important lessons about the fragility of these ancient ice worlds. The fragmentation process itself is poorly understood. Some comets survive dozens of passages around the Sun without breaking apart, while others shatter on their first approach. The structural integrity seems to depend on how the ice and rock were originally assembled, whether the nucleus is a single coherent body or a loosely bound collection of smaller pieces held together by weak gravity and ice acting as cement. When the Sun's heat begins to vaporize the ice, the internal pressure can build to the point where the structure fails catastrophically. Jets of gas erupt asymmetrically, creating torques that spin the nucleus faster and faster until centrifugal forces tear it apart. Or perhaps the nucleus has natural fault lines, cracks created during its formation, or from impacts with interstellar dust grains during its billions of years wandering through space. These weaknesses propagate under thermal stress until the entire structure comes apart like a clay pot in a kiln. For 3IATLAS, astronomers watched nervously as it approached perihelion, knowing that at any moment the comet could fragment or explode. Every observation was precious, because each one might be the last before the object destroyed itself. But as of the most recent observations, 3IATLAS had remained stable. Its brightness and activity level appeared steady, neither dimming unexpectedly nor erupting in a violent display. The nucleus appeared to be structurally sound, able to withstand the intense thermal and gravitational stresses of perihelion. This suggested the ice and rock were well bound, that the object had survived its formation and billions of years of interstellar travel without accumulating fatal damage. As the comet passed behind the Sun from Earth's perspective in late October, ground-based observations became temporarily impossible. The Sun's overwhelming glare blocked our view. For several weeks, 3IATLAS vanished from telescopes on Earth, hidden behind our star like a performer stepping behind a curtain. This solar conjunction, as astronomers call it, is a frustrating but inevitable aspect of observing comets. When an object passes on the far side of the Sun, it becomes lost in the brilliance, invisible to optical telescopes and difficult even for radio observatories to track. But spacecraft throughout the solar system provided invaluable data during this blind spot. Unlike ground-based telescopes, spacecraft can be positioned at different locations, viewing the Sun and nearby objects from multiple angles simultaneously. On October 3rd, 3IATLAS made its closest approach to Mars, passing the red planet at a distance of only 19 million miles. This presented a unique opportunity. NASA had multiple spacecraft in orbit around Mars, and 3 of them successfully observed the interstellar visitor. The images captured from Mars orbit represent the closest views humanity has obtained of any interstellar object. The European Space Agency's Mars Express orbiter, NASA's MAVEN spacecraft, and the ESA's ExoMars Trace Gas orbiter all turned their instruments toward the passing comet. The CAS's camera on ExoMars was designed to image the Martian surface in high resolution, but engineers reprogrammed it to aim at the sky above Mars, capturing 3IATLAS as it swept past against a backdrop of distant stars. The data from these Mars observations allowed scientists to improve the predicted trajectory of the comet by a factor of 10, reducing the uncertainty in its position dramatically. This was a planetary defense rehearsal of sorts. If a dangerous asteroid or comet were ever detected on a collision course with Earth, the ability to triangulate its position using observations from multiple locations in space would be crucial for calculating an accurate orbit and determining the level of threat. 3IATLAS provided the perfect test case, a a fast-moving object whose trajectory needed to be known with extreme precision. Following its passage of Mars, 3IATLAS continued its journey outbound from the Sun. On December 19, 2025, it made its closest approach to Earth, though calling it close is perhaps misleading. At its nearest point, the comet was still 1.8 astronomical units away, roughly 170 million miles or 270 million kilometres. That's nearly twice the distance between the Earth and the Sun. It was never a threat. It will never be a threat. Its trajectory is taking it away from the inner solar system, and it's accelerating toward the outer dark. By March of 2026, it will pass near Jupiter's orbit one final time before crossing the heliopause, the boundary where our Sun's influence fades and true interstellar space begins, and then it will be gone, forever. NASA launched an unprecedented observation campaign to study this rare visitor. 12 different NASA spacecraft and space telescopes captured images and data as 3IATLAS passed through our solar system. The James Webb Space Telescope, the most powerful observatory ever built, trained its infrared eyes on the comet, searching for the signatures of specific molecules in the coma. The goal was to determine the precise chemical composition, to read the comet like a book and learn what its parent stellar system was like. Was it rich in water, like our own Kuiper Belt comets, or did it come from a drier, more exotic environment? The Spheric Space Telescope also observed the comet, adding its data to the growing archive. Closer to Earth, the Hubble Space Telescope continued its observations, tracking how the coma evolved as the comet moved through perihelion. From farther out in the solar system, the Lucy spacecraft, which is on a mission to explore asteroids that share Jupiter's orbit, captured long-exposure images of 3IATLAS when the comet was 240 million miles away from the spacecraft. The Lalaurie panchromatic imager on Lucy showed the comet's coma and tail as faint smudges against the black, a ghostly visitor photographed from the deep frontier of our solar system. Perhaps the most remarkable observations came from the Stereo A spacecraft, part of NASA's Solar Terrestrial Relations Observatory mission. Using its heliocentric imager instrument, Stereo A captured a series of stacked images showing 3IATLAS as a bright fuzzy orb moving against the background stars. The comet had brightened enough to be visible even through the noise-dominated background of deep space, allowing the instrument to track it across the sky. The ESA's JUICE mission, currently on its way to explore Jupiter's icy moons, also turned its instruments toward the passing visitor. Though JUICE was farther from the comet than the Mars orbiters, it observed 3IATLAS just after perihelion, when the object was in its most active state, releasing the maximum amount of gas and dust. The data from JUICE won't be transmitted back to Earth until February of 2026 due to communication constraints, but when it arrives, it will provide crucial insights into the comet's behaviour at its moment of maximum heating. Even the Solar and Heliospheric Observatory, known as SOHO, managed to capture faint images of 3IATLAS as the comet passed through the spacecraft's field of view in late October. SOHO is designed to study the Sun, not comets, but its instruments can detect bright objects near the solar disk. And 3IATLAS was luminous enough to appear as a dim smudge in SOHO's data. By observing the comet from so many different locations throughout the solar system, NASA and its international partners created a three-dimensional picture of 3IATLAS. Each spacecraft provided a unique viewing angle, and by combining all the data, astronomers could study how the coma changed, shape, how the tail evolved, and how jets of material erupted from different regions of the hidden nucleus. This was the most comprehensive study of an interstellar object ever conducted, and it revealed that 3IATLAS, despite its exotic origin, behaves in many ways like the comets born in our own solar system, following the same physical laws, responding to the sun's heat in familiar ways. And yet, subtle differences remained. The delayed onset of water outgassing, the unusual carbon dioxide dominance, the reddish colour indicating eons of radiation exposure. These were the fingerprints of an alien origin, proof that this visitor came from somewhere else, somewhere with different conditions, different chemistry, a different history. This was a piece of another world delivered to our doorstep by the slow currents of the galaxy. A message in a bottle that had been travelling for 4.5 billion years. The scientific community was unanimous in its assessment. 3IATLAS is real, it is interstellar, and it poses absolutely no threat to Earth. NASA, the European Space Agency, and astronomers around the world issued statements reassuring the public. The trajectory has been calculated with extraordinary precision. The comet will not impact our planet. It will not cause earthquakes or floods, or any of the catastrophic scenarios that inevitably arise whenever the internet learns of an object approaching from space. The laws of physics are clear, and they are not negotiable. But for millions of people around the world, the arrival of 3IATLAS means something entirely different. For them, this is not merely a comet. This is not a random chunk of ice and rock that happened to wander into our solar system by cosmic accident. For them, this is the fulfillment of ancient prophecy. This is the return of the gods. This is Nibiru. And to understand why they believe this, we must journey backward through time, not just decades or centuries, but millennia, to the dusty tablets of ancient Mesopotamia and the revolutionary theories of a man who claimed to have unlocked humanity's greatest secret. In 1976, a Russian-born American author named Zecharia Sitchin published a book that would change the landscape of fringe archaeology forever. The book was titled The 12th Planet, and its central thesis was as audacious as it was controversial. Sitchin claimed that ancient Sumerian texts, written in cuneiform script on clay tablets over 4,000 years ago, were not myths or religious allegories. They were historical documents, literal accounts of extraterrestrial contact. According to Sitchin's interpretation, the Sumerians described a solar system containing 12 members, the Sun, the Moon, and 10 planets. But we only know of 9 planets, and since Pluto was still considered a planet in 1976, that left one unaccounted for. Sitchin called this missing world Nibiru, a name he borrowed from Babylonian astronomy. He claimed Nibiru was a massive planet, perhaps 4 times the size of Earth, on a vast elliptical orbit that took 3,600 years to complete. For most of that orbit, Nibiru would be far beyond Pluto, lost in the cold darkness of the outer solar system, invisible and forgotten. But every 3,600 years, its orbit would bring it swinging back through the inner solar system, passing between Mars and Jupiter, close enough to be visible from Earth, close enough to exert gravitational influence on the other planets. And it was inhabited. According to Sitchin, Nibiru was home to an advanced humanoid species called the Anunnaki, a word he translated as those who from heaven to earth came. These beings were not gods in the spiritual sense. They were flesh and blood extraterrestrials with technology so advanced it appeared magical to primitive humans, and roughly 450,000 years ago, they came to Earth. Their mission was simple. They needed gold. Sitchin claimed that Nibiru's atmosphere was failing, eroding into space, and the only way to save their world was to suspend fine particles of gold in the upper atmosphere, creating a reflective shield that would retain heat and radiation. They established mining operations on Earth, primarily in southeastern Africa, and for thousands of years, the rank-and-file Anunnaki workers toiled in the mines, extracting the precious metal and shipping it back to their home world. But eventually the workers rebelled. The labour was too grueling, the conditions too harsh. The Anunnaki leadership faced a crisis. They needed a solution. And that solution was humanity. According to Sitchin's interpretation of the Atrahasis epic and other Mesopotamian creation myths, the Anunnaki chief scientist, a being named Enki, proposed creating a hybrid species. He would take the primitive hominids already evolving on Earth, creatures like Homo erectus, and genetically engineer them, infusing their DNA with Anunnaki genetic material to create a more intelligent, more capable worker. The result was Homo sapiens, us. We were designed to be slaves, created to toil in the mines for our alien masters. The biblical story of Adam and Eve, Sitchin argued, was a distorted memory of this genetic engineering event passed down through generations until it became religious mythology. Sitchin's narrative provided explanations for dozens of ancient mysteries. Why did civilization appear so suddenly in Sumer? Because the Anunnaki taught humans agriculture, writing and mathematics. Why do ancient texts describe gods with human-like emotions and conflicts? Because they were not gods at all, but advanced beings with their own politics and power struggles. Why are there stories of a great flood in nearly every ancient culture? Because the last passage of Nibiru, around 11,000 BC, caused massive gravitational disruptions that triggered the melting of Antarctic ice sheets, resulting in the biblical deluge. The mainstream academic response to Sitchin's work was swift and unequivocal. Scholars of ancient languages, particularly experts in Sumerian and Akkadian, tore his translations apart. They argued that he had misread the texts, mistranslated key words, and imposed a modern technological framework onto ancient spiritual and mythological literature. The word Anunnaki, according to scholarly consensus among Assyriologists and Sumerologists, simply meant princely offspring or children of Anu, referring to the principal deities of the Sumerian pantheon. The cuneiform evidence consistently supports this interpretation across hundreds of tablets. Sitchin's translation of the term as those who from heaven to earth came required reading meanings into the individual components that don't align with how these words function in other contexts throughout Mesopotamian literature. The cylinder seals that Sitchin interpreted as depicting the solar system have been examined by specialists in Mesopotamian art and iconography, who identify them as standard presentation scenes showing worshippers before deities with the celestial symbols representing common astronomical and religious motifs rather than planetary diagrams. The seal Sitchin, designated VA-243 for instance, shows what experts recognise as a six-pointed star, a common symbol in ancient Near Eastern art that appears in numerous contexts having nothing to do with planetary systems. The number 3600 held mathematical significance in Sumerian base 60 mathematics, where it was called a shah. Mainstream scholars interpret this as a numerical unit, similar to how we might use the word myriad to mean 10,000. Sitchin, however, interpreted the shah as a literal measurement of orbital time, though this reading isn't supported by the context in which the term appears throughout cuneiform literature. But despite the academic rejection, Sitchin's book sold millions of copies. His theories were compelling, dramatic, and they provided answers to profound questions about human origins. They tapped into a deep cultural desire to believe that we are not alone, that our history is more extraordinary than we've been taught, that somewhere out there our creators are watching. And now, in 2025, the true believers have a new piece of evidence: the arrival of 3IATLAS. The conspiracy theories began circulating within hours of the discovery announcement. Online forums dedicated to ancient astronaut theories, UFO sightings, and alternative history exploded with speculation. Websites like Godlike Productions, Above Top Secret, and countless YouTube channels devoted to ancient mysteries immediately seized upon the news. Within 24 hours, dozens of videos had been uploaded with titles like Return of the Anunnaki confirmed, Nibiru finally arrives, and the government cannot hide this any longer. These videos accumulated millions of views within days, shared frantically across social media platforms by believers eager to spread the word. The comment sections became echo chambers where any skepticism was immediately attacked as disinformation spread by government shills. Anyone questioning the Anunnaki interpretation was accused of being a paid NASA troll, part of the vast conspiracy to keep humanity ignorant. The timing was too perfect, they argued. The direction of approach too convenient. The name itself, Atlas, felt like a cosmic joke, a reference to the Titan who held up the heavens in Greek mythology. Some conspiracy theorists went further, claiming that Atlas was an acronym standing for Ancient Transmission, linked to Anunnaki Starship or alien transport lander arriving to solar system. These backronyms spread through the conspiracy community despite having no basis in reality. The actual ATLAS acronym stood for Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, a perfectly mundane designation that had been in use since the network was established. But in the world of conspiracy thinking, every coincidence is evidence, every name contains hidden meaning, every official explanation is a lie covering up a deeper truth. But more importantly, the believers pointed to the object's characteristics and claimed they matched ancient prophecies with eerie precision. They pulled out old translations of Sumerian and Babylonian texts highlighting every reference to celestial bodies crossing the sky, to gods descending from heaven, to catastrophic floods and world-ending fire. They created elaborate charts showing supposed correlations between ancient calendars and modern astronomical calculations. They pointed to Mayan long count dates, Hindu Yuga cycles, and Christian Revelation prophecies, claiming all of them predicted exactly this moment. The fact that these various prophetic systems contradicted each other and proposed completely different timelines was conveniently ignored. When faced with inconsistencies, conspiracy theorists simply layered on more complexity, arguing that different ancient cultures had access to different pieces of the puzzle and only by combining all of them could the full truth emerge. First, there was the matter of its trajectory. 3IATLAS approached from the direction of Sagittarius, from the region of the galactic centre. In Sitchin's cosmology, Nibiru's orbit was described as highly inclined relative to the plane of the ecliptic, approaching from an angle that would make it difficult to detect until it was relatively close. The southern approach of 3IATLAS seemed to match this description. Second, there was the eccentricity of its orbit. While the measured eccentricity of 6.14 indicated a hyperbolic trajectory, meaning the object would leave the solar system, conspiracy theorists argued that gravitational interactions during its passage could potentially alter this. In theory, an extremely close encounter with Jupiter or Saturn might slow an object enough to capture it, though such captures would require extraordinarily specific circumstances and would likely result in highly elongated orbits, not the circular path Nibiru supposedly follows. Most captured moons of the outer planets are thought to have been acquired billions of years ago under different dynamical conditions. Third, there was the object's activity pattern. The fact that observations suggested it began outgassing unusually far from the Sun, at distances where typical water ice remains frozen, pointed toward a composition rich in highly volatile materials like carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide. These substances can sublimate at much colder temperatures than water. Conspiracy theorists, however, claimed this was evidence of artificial heating, of internal power sources keeping the object warm. This interpretation ignored the well-documented phenomenon of comets rich in super-volatile ices becoming active at great distances, a natural process observed in many long-period comets from our own Oort cloud. Fourth, there was the size. Hubble observations indicated the nucleus could be anywhere from roughly 0.5 kilometre to 5.6 kilometres in diameter, a wide range reflecting the difficulty of distinguishing the solid nucleus from its surrounding coma of gas and dust. Conspiracy theorists focused on the upper end of this estimate, claiming it was suspiciously large and perfectly sized for a generation ship. In reality, many known comets fall within or exceed this size range, including Comet Hale-Bopp, which had a nucleus estimated at 60 kilometres across. Fifth, and perhaps most compelling to the believers, was electromagnetic speculation. Some conspiracy theorists claimed that anomalous radio emissions had been detected coming from the direction of 3IATLAS, emissions that supposedly showed patterns inconsistent with natural process. These claims circulated online without verification or credible sources, yet they spread quickly through social media, creating an echo chamber of confirmation bias, where unsubstantiated assertions were treated as established fact. Sixth, there was the ancient tablet evidence. Believers pointed to the fact that ancient Mesopotamian texts described Nibiru as approaching from the direction of the south, from the region of the underworld, the realm below the ecliptic plane. The Babylonian term Nibiru itself meant crossing point or place of transition, which could be interpreted as an object crossing the plane of the solar system at an angle. The match seemed too perfect to be coincidence. The believers constructed an elaborate narrative to explain what was really happening. They argued that 3IATLAS was not a comet at all, but a massive spacecraft, either the planet Nibiru itself or a vessel sent ahead as a scout, a herald announcing the return of the Anunnaki. They claimed that world governments had known about this object long before its public discovery. The pre-discovery observations from May, they argued, were evidence of a cover-up. NASA and other space agencies had been tracking 3IATLAS for months, perhaps even years, but had only announced its existence once it became impossible to hide. The true orbital parameters were being kept secret. The real size of the object was much larger than publicly stated, and most importantly, the object was not following a natural trajectory. It was under intelligent control. The believers pointed to the fact that the object's perihelion, its closest approach to the Sun, placed it precisely in the gap between Earth and Mars. This was not random, they argued. This was a deliberate parking orbit, a stable position where the craft could remain while its occupants observed the inner planets and prepared for the next phase of their mission. They claimed that electromagnetic communications were being exchanged between 3IATLAS and secret facilities on Earth, that the Anunnaki were in contact with world leaders, negotiating the terms of their return. Some theories suggested the Anunnaki were benevolent, returning to uplift humanity, to share advanced technology, to guide us toward a new golden age. Other theories were darker. They claimed the Anunnaki were coming back to reclaim their property. Humanity was their creation, their genetically engineered slave race, and now, after millennia of absence, they were returning to reassert control. The gold mining operations would begin again, the genetic experiments would resume, and those who resisted would be eliminated. The most extreme versions of the conspiracy claimed that the approach of 3IATLAS was triggering ancient defense systems buried beneath the Earth's surface. Pyramids were not tombs, they were power generators, designed to create an electromagnetic shield that would protect humanity from the Anunnaki's return. Secret governments were frantically trying to reactivate these systems, working with esoteric knowledge preserved by secret societies for thousands of years. Others claimed that the Anunnaki had never truly left Earth. They had been here all along, living in hidden underground bases or orbiting in cloaked spacecraft, manipulating human history from the shadows. The arrival of 3IATLAS was not a return but a reinforcement. More Anunnaki were coming to join those already here, and together they would implement the final phase of their ancient plan. The scientific community responded to these conspiracy theories with a mixture of frustration and weary resignation. Astronomers, planetary scientists, and specialists in orbital and mechanics issued statements, wrote blog posts, and gave interviews explaining why 3IATLAS could not possibly be Nibiru. First, the orbital period was fundamentally incompatible. Sitchin proposed that Nibiru followed a 3,600-year orbit, returning to the inner solar system at regular intervals, but 3IATLAS exhibited an eccentricity of 6.14, indicating it was not gravitationally bound to our Sun. The mathematics of orbital mechanics are unambiguous. An object with this eccentricity is on a hyperbolic escape trajectory and will never return. For 3IATLAS to be Nibiru, every careful observation and calculation by astronomers worldwide would have to be systematically wrong. Second, the object's behaviour was entirely consistent with a natural comet. The outgassing, the formation of a coma and tail, the brightening as it approached the Sun, the spectroscopic signatures showing water, carbon dioxide and organic molecules, all of this matched what astronomers expected to see from a comet originating in another stellar system. There was no evidence of artificial heating, no radio emissions, no course corrections, nothing that suggested intelligence or technology. Third, the size of the object was far too small to be a planet. Even the upper estimate of 5.6 kilometres in diameter was minuscule compared to Earth's 12,700 kilometre diameter. Nibiru was supposed to be a giant planet, several times Earth's size. 3IATLAS was barely larger than a mountain. The mass difference was billions of times. The idea that this tiny object was the prophesied destroyer of worlds was absurd on its face. Fourth, the gravitational effects were non-existent. If a massive planet were approaching the inner solar system, its gravity would perturb the orbits of the other planets in ways that would be immediately obvious. This is not speculation, it is established physics that has been confirmed countless times. The discovery of Neptune itself in 1846 was accomplished through precisely this method. Astronomers noticed that Uranus was not following its predicted orbit. Something was pulling on it gravitationally. By analysing the deviations, French mathematician Urbain Le Verrier calculated where an unknown planet must be located to cause the observed perturbations. When astronomers pointed their telescopes at the predicted location, there was Neptune, exactly where mathematics said it should be. This triumph of theoretical astronomy proved that gravity is an exquisitely precise force that cannot be hidden or faked. In the modern era, we track the positions of planets with extraordinary accuracy. Ground-based telescopes, spacecraft like Voyager and New Horizons, and radar ranging from facilities like Arecibo and Goldstone provide continuous data on planetary positions. If a Mars-sized or larger object were approaching the inner solar system, its gravitational influence would perturb the orbits of Mars, Earth, and Venus long before the object became visible. We would see the planets deviating from their expected positions by measurable amounts. The asteroids in the main belt would show disturbed orbits, with some being scattered inward toward the Sun and others being flung outward. The trajectories of spacecraft in orbit around Mars and Venus would require constant correction to compensate for the unexpected gravitational pull. None of this was happening. The planets continued their ancient dance with perfect predictability, undisturbed by any massive intruder. Mars arrived at its predicted position in the sky to within fractions of an arcsecond. Earth's orbital parameters showed no anomalies. The asteroid belt remained quiescent. Every piece of data confirmed that nothing more massive than a small comet was present in the inner solar system. The conspiracy theorists had an answer for this, of course. They claimed that the Anunnaki possessed gravity shielding technology, advanced physics that allows them to mask their gravitational signature. This explanation, however, contradicts our fundamental understanding of general relativity, which describes gravity not as a force but as the curvature of space-time itself, caused by mass and energy. To shield or hide gravitational effects would require either eliminating the mass entirely or invoking physics that contradicts every confirmed observation we've made about how the universe works. While physicists continue to explore exotic possibilities at the frontiers of theoretical physics, no plausible mechanism for gravity shielding has ever been proposed that doesn't violate well-established physical principles. Fifth, the object would have been visible to amateur astronomers for months if it were truly the size claimed by conspiracy theorists. A planet-sized object at the distance 3IATLAS past Earth would have been brighter than Mars, easily visible to the naked eye. It would have been photographed by thousands of amateur astronomers around the world. It could not have been hidden. The conspiracy theory required a level of coordination and control that was simply impossible in an age of widespread amateur astronomy and global internet communication. Sixth, and perhaps most damning, the actual science of planetary formation made the existence of a planet like Nibiru deeply implausible. An orbit with an eccentricity high enough to take a planet from the outer solar system to the inner solar system every 3,600 years would be gravitationally unstable. Over millions of years, interactions with the giant planets would either eject such an object from the solar system entirely or cause it to crash into the Sun or another planet. A planet on such an orbit could not have survived for the 4.5 billion year history of the solar system. It would have been eliminated long ago. But despite the overwhelming scientific consensus, the conspiracy theories persisted. They mutated and evolved, adapting to each new piece of data. When NASA announced that 3IATLAS would make its closest approach to Earth in December, at a distance of 1.8 astronomical units, conspiracy theorists claimed this was disinformation, that the real closest approach would be much nearer. When the comet passed behind the Sun in late October and temporarily became unobservable from Earth, conspiracy theorists claimed this was when the real action would happen, when the Anunnaki would make contact with world governments under the cover of the solar blind spot. When no catastrophe occurred at perihelion, conspiracy theorists simply moved the goalposts. The Anunnaki were not returning to destroy Earth, they argued. They were returning to save it. Or the arrival was only the first phase of a multi-year plan. Or 3IATLAS was not Nibiru itself, but a scout craft of ours. And the real Nibiru was still years away, hidden behind the Sun, slowly approaching. The psychological appeal of these conspiracy theories was powerful. They offered a grand narrative, a story where everything was connected, where random cosmic events had meaning and purpose. They provided a sense of secret knowledge, the feeling of being one of the awakened few who could see through the lies of the establishment. They tapped into ancient fears and ancient hopes, the terror of Judgment Day and the promise of divine intervention. And perhaps most importantly, they offered an explanation for the chaos and uncertainty of the modern world. If the Anunnaki were real, if they were returning, if ancient prophecies were being fulfilled, then the current state of human civilization made sense. The wars, the environmental destruction, the social upheaval, all of it was part of a larger pattern, a cosmic plan that was finally reaching its climax. For those who believed 3IATLAS was not a random visitor from another star, it was the most significant event in human history, and they were watching it unfold in real time. To truly understand the conspiracy, we must examine the ancient texts themselves with the rigor they deserve. What did the Sumerians and Babylonians actually write about Nibiru? The most important source is the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic dating to around 1200 BC. This text is not a single unified document, but exists in multiple copies from different time periods, with variations between versions that reflect the evolution of Babylonian religious thought over centuries. The most complete version comes from the Library of Ashurbanipal in Nineveh, discovered in the ruins of the ancient city by archaeologists in the 19th century. The epic itself was likely compiled from older oral traditions and written sources, synthesizing various creation myths into a coherent narrative that served to justify the supremacy of Babylon and its patron deity Marduk. This epic describes the rise of the god Marduk to supreme power through his defeat of the chaos dragon Tiamat. The story is clearly mythological in structure, following patterns common to creation myths throughout the ancient world. Tiamat represents primordial chaos, the unformed waters that existed before creation. Marduk represents order, civilization, and kingship. The conflict between them is not a historical event, but a symbolic representation of the eternal struggle between chaos and order, darkness and light, wilderness and civilization. In the story, Marduk establishes order in the cosmos by setting the stars and planets in their proper stations, and in doing so he creates Nibiru. The text states, "He set up the station of Nibiru to determine their celestial bands so that none could transgress or fall short." This passage has been the subject of intense scholarly debate for over a century. The Akkadian words used here have been analysed by generations of Assyriologists, each bringing new linguistic tools and deeper understanding of the language. The consensus interpretation, shared by virtually every credentialed expert in cuneiform languages, is that Nibiru in this context refers to a fixed point in the celestial sphere, specifically associated with the planet Jupiter in its role as a celestial regulator. The word Nibiru derives from the Akkadian root nbr, meaning to cross or to ferry. It appears in various forms throughout Mesopotamian literature, always with connotations of crossing, passage, or transition. In some texts it refers to a ferry boat crossing a river, in others it designates a border crossing or frontier post. When applied to astronomy, it consistently refers to a celestial crossing point, a location where something transitions from one state or region to another. Mainstream Assyriologists interpret Nibiru in the Enuma Elish as referring to the planet Jupiter, Marduk's celestial counterpart. This identification is not arbitrary or speculative. Multiple lines of evidence support it. First, Jupiter was unambiguously associated with Marduk throughout Babylonian astronomical texts. Second, Jupiter is the largest and brightest of the planets visible to ancient astronomers, making it a fitting celestial manifestation of the king of the gods. Third, Jupiter's motion through the zodiac would cause it to cross the celestial equator, the projection of Earth's equator onto the sky, making it literally a crossing point between the northern and southern celestial hemispheres. The term Station of Nibiru referred to a specific point in the sky, likely related to the celestial equator or ecliptic. When Jupiter crossed this line, it was said to be at the Station of Nibiru, the crossing place where it transitioned from one celestial hemisphere to another. This astronomical interpretation makes perfect sense within the context of Babylonian cosmology and observational astronomy. Other Babylonian astronomical texts reinforce this interpretation. In the Muel Apin, a comprehensive star catalogue that scholars date to around 1000 BC, Nibiru appears in contexts that suggest it referred to Jupiter or to a specific celestial location associated with Jupiter's motion. The text describes astronomical phenomena that align with what we would expect if Nibiru designated the celestial equator crossing point where Jupiter transitions between celestial hemispheres. However, the texts are not entirely consistent, which is unsurprising given they span centuries and multiple scribal traditions. Some passages describe Nibiru as the star of Marduk, others refer to it as a planet, and still others use it as a term for specific celestial phenomena. This variability likely reflects the evolution of astronomical terminology over time and the fact that ancient astronomers used multiple names for the same objects depending on context. Such ambiguity in ancient texts has allowed alternative interpretations to gain traction among non-specialists. Zechariah Sitchin argued that the ancient Babylonians used multiple names for the same planet depending on its position in the sky, and that Nibiru specifically referred to the mysterious 12th planet when it was at perihelion, crossing through the inner solar system. He pointed to cylinder seals and other artifacts showing celestial symbols and claimed they were literal star maps depicting all 12 members of the solar system. But professional Assyriologists have uniformly rejected these interpretations. They argue that Sitchin lacked formal training in cuneiform languages, that he relied on outdated translations, and that he cherry-picked passages that seemed to support his thesis, while ignoring the broader context. The cylinder seal that Sitchin claimed showed the solar system, known as VA243, has been thoroughly analysed by experts who conclude it simply depicts a presentation scene with standard religious symbols. The celestial bodies shown are the sun, the the moon and several stars, not planets. Nevertheless, the myth persists, because myths once planted in the collective consciousness are extraordinarily difficult to eradicate. They take root in the fertile soil of human imagination and grow despite all attempts to uproot them. We must ask ourselves a profound question. Why are these conspiracy theories so appealing? Why do millions of people around the world choose to believe in ancient astronauts and returning gods despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary? The answer lies in the intersection of psychology, culture, and the fundamental human need for meaning. Psychologists have studied conspiracy theory belief for decades, and certain patterns emerge consistently. First, there is the appeal of hidden knowledge. Conspiracy theories offer the seductive promise that you, the believer, are part of an elite group that sees through the lies everyone else accepts. This provides a sense of superiority and specialness, a feeling that you possess knowledge that makes you fundamentally different from the masses. Psychologists call this the feeling of being special, of having access to insider information that separates you from the sheep who blindly accept what they're told. In a world where most people feel powerless and insignificant, where individual agency seems crushed beneath vast impersonal forces, economic systems, government bureaucracies, corporate power structures, this is a potent psychological reward. The conspiracy believer can say, I know what they don't know, I see what they can't see, I am awake while they sleep. This feeling compensates for powerlessness in other areas of life. If you cannot control your job, your finances, your health, or your relationships, you can at least control your understanding of reality. You can construct a worldview where you are the hero, the enlightened one, the truth seeker standing against the tide of ignorance. Research has shown that people experiencing feelings of powerlessness or loss of control are more likely to believe in conspiracy theories as a way of reasserting cognitive control over their environment. Second, there is the appeal of grand narratives. Modern life is chaotic and fragmented. The news cycle bombards us with disconnected events that seem random and meaningless. Conspiracy theories provide a unifying framework, a story that connects everything together into a coherent whole. They transform random chaos into purposeful design, and in doing so they make the world feel more comprehensible, more manageable, less terrifying. Third, there is the appeal of ancient wisdom. Our modern technological civilization, despite its achievements, has lost something that ancient cultures possessed. A sense of connection to the cosmos, a feeling of participating in sacred mysteries. The ancient astronaut theory, paradoxically, restores this sense of cosmic connection while maintaining a technological framework. The gods were aliens, but they were still gods, beings of immense power who shaped human destiny. This allows believers to have their sacred narrative while still feeling intellectually sophisticated and scientifically minded. Fourth, there is the appeal of apocalyptic thinking, the idea that we are living in end times, that a great transformation is coming, that everything is about to change. This narrative has been present in human culture for thousands of years. It satisfies a deep psychological need to believe that we, the people alive right now, are living through the most important moment in history. The return of the Anunnaki is simply the latest iteration of this eternal apocalyptic narrative, a modern retelling of Revelation and Judgment Day. Fifth, there is the appeal of distrust in authority. The 20th and 21st centuries have provided ample evidence that governments lie, that corporations deceive, that the powerful manipulate information for their own benefit. This legitimate distrust creates a receptive environment for conspiracy theories. If they lied about weapons of mass destruction, if they covered up corporate pollution, if they manipulated financial markets, then why wouldn't they hide the truth about alien contact? Once trust is broken, everything becomes suspect, and conspiracy theories rush in to fill the vacuum. But perhaps the deepest appeal of the Anunnaki theory is existential. The idea that humanity was created by advanced aliens, that we were designed for a purpose even if that purpose was servitude, this provides an answer to the question that has haunted philosophers and theologians for millennia. Why are we here? The scientific answer, that we are the product of random evolutionary processes, that we emerge from mindless natural selection operating over billions of years, is profoundly unsatisfying to many people. It makes us accidents, cosmic flukes, bits of self-organizing matter with no inherent purpose or meaning. But the Anunnaki theory restores purpose. We were created deliberately. We have a role to play in a cosmic drama. Our lives matter because we are part of a plan that spans the stars. As 3IATLAS continues its journey outward from the Sun, as it fades from view and disappears back into the interstellar dark from which it came, we are left with profound questions. Not questions about conspiracy theories or ancient astronauts, but questions about the nature of our existence and our place in the universe. The scientific facts about 3IATLAS are clear. It is a natural object, a comet born in another stellar system approximately 4.6 billion years ago. It was likely ejected from its parent system by gravitational interactions with giant planets, cast into the interstellar void to wander the galaxy for eons. By pure chance, its path intersected with our solar system. It will complete its brief visit, swing around our sun, and return to the dark, never to be seen again. There are no Anunnaki, there is no Nibiru, there is no ancient prophecy being fulfilled, and yet the story of 3IATLAS is no less extraordinary for being natural. Consider what this object represents. It is a piece of another world, a fragment of a planetary system that formed at the same time our own solar system was coalescing from a disk of dust and gas orbiting our infant sun. For 4.5 billion years, this object has been travelling through space, a solemn witness to the evolution of the galaxy. It has passed uncounted stars. It has drifted through molecular clouds where new stars are being born. It has felt the gravitational tug of distant black holes and the radiation pressure from supernova explosions. It has survived impacts with interstellar dust grains travelling at enormous velocities. And now it has come to visit us. For a few months, it shared the sky with our planet, visible to our telescopes, touchable by our spacecraft, measurable by our instruments. We have learned from it. We have extracted information encoded in its chemical composition, data about the conditions in which it formed, clues about the nature of its parent system. We have proven that interstellar objects pass through our solar system regularly, that we are not isolated, that the galaxy is full of wanderers like 3IATLAS, and that with the right telescopes and the right technology, we can study them, learn from them, and perhaps even intercept them. The discovery of 3 interstellar objects in less than a decade has revolutionized our understanding of planetary system formation and evolution. We now know that the process of ejecting small bodies is a natural part of planetary system development. As giant planets form and migrate, they scatter countless smaller objects into interstellar space. These wanderers carry with them the chemical fingerprints of their birth systems, and by studying them we can learn about planets around other stars without ever leaving our own solar system. This is the true profound meaning of 3IATLAS. Not that it is a vehicle carrying ancient gods returning to judge humanity, but that it is a message from another world, a cosmic email, sent billions of years ago by the laws of physics, finally delivered to our inbox. And when we read that message, when we decode the information contained in its spectrum and its orbit, we learn something fundamental about the universe we inhabit. We learn that planetary systems are messy, dynamic places where objects are constantly being scattered and ejected. We learn that the galaxy is full of these wanderers, trillions upon trillions of them, drifting through the dark, occasionally passing through other stellar systems, sharing material and information across the vast distances of interstellar space. We learn that we are not isolated. The boundaries of our solar system are porous, and objects flow in and out, connecting us to the larger galactic ecosystem. We learn that if we want to study exoplanets, we don't necessarily need to build starships and travel light years through space. We can wait for pieces of those worlds to come to us, delivered by the slow currents of the galactic dynamics. This is the vision of the future that 3IATLAS offers. Not a vision of ancient gods and prophetic doom, but a vision of scientific exploration and cosmic connection. As our telescopes improve, we will detect more interstellar objects. The Vera C. Rubin Observatory, set to come online in the near future, is expected to detect approximately 1 interstellar object per year once it begins full operations. We will build a catalogue of these visitors, measuring their compositions, tracking their orbits, learning their stories, and eventually we will do more than observe. We will intercept. Multiple mission concepts have been proposed to send spacecraft to rendezvous with interstellar objects as they pass through our solar system. These missions are technically challenging because the closing velocities are enormous, requiring advanced propulsion systems and precise trajectory planning. But they are possible, and when we finally send a probe to land on an interstellar object, when we return samples from another stellar system to Earth, when we hold in our hands material that formed around another star, that will be the moment when the search for the Anunnaki truly ends, because we will have become the Anunnaki ourselves. We will be the beings who travel between the stars, who collect materials from distant worlds, who study the building blocks of planets in other systems. The mythology will have come full circle, and we will understand that the gods we were searching for were never coming from outside. They were always us, our future selves, reaching back through time to show us what we could become. The story of 3IATLAS is ultimately a story about perspective. To the conspiracy theorist, it is a harbinger of apocalypse or salvation, the return of ancient masters who will judge humanity and reshape our world. To the scientist, it is a natural phenomenon, an ice and rock fragment from another stellar system providing invaluable data about planetary formation and galactic dynamics. But perhaps there is a third perspective, one that transcends both the conspiratorial and the purely scientific. Perhaps 3IATLAS is a mirror, reflecting back to us our own hopes and fears, our need for meaning and connection, our terror of insignificance and our hope for transcendence. The human species stands at a unique moment in its history. We have developed the technology to detect objects from other star systems. We have sent spacecraft to every planet in our solar system. We have peered deep into the universe with telescopes that can see galaxies billions of light years away. We have decoded the human genome, split the atom, and created artificial intelligence. We are on the verge of becoming an interplanetary species with plans to establish permanent settlements on Mars and the Moon. And yet we remain profoundly uncertain about our place in the cosmos. Are we alone? Is intelligence common in the universe? Or are we a statistical fluke, a 1 in a trillion accident that will never be repeated? Will we survive long enough to spread through the galaxy? Or will we destroy ourselves before we even leave the cradle of Earth? These are the questions that haunt us, and conspiracy theories about ancient astronauts are, in a sense, an attempt to answer these questions, an attempt to say that no, we are not alone. We were never alone, and our destiny is tied to forces larger than ourselves. The appeal of this narrative is understandable, but we must resist it, not because it is too strange or too radical, but because it sells humanity short. The ancient astronaut theory robs us of our greatest achievement. It takes credit for human ingenuity and gives it to hypothetical aliens. It looks at the pyramids, the ziggurats, the mathematical insights of ancient cultures, and says we could not have done this on our own. We needed help from the stars, but this is a lie. Human beings built those monuments. Human beings developed agriculture and writing and mathematics. Human beings decoded the motions of the planets and invented the wheel and discovered fire. We did this, not because aliens taught us, but because we are the descendants of ancestors who refused to give up, who looked at a hostile world and decided to understand it, to master it, to reshape it according to our will. The story of humanity is not a story of servitude to cosmic masters. It is a story of liberation from ignorance, of triumph over adversity, of imagination and creativity and endless innovation. We are not genetically engineered slaves mining gold for alien overlords. We are the universe becoming conscious of itself, matter organising into patterns complex enough to ask where we came from and where we are going. When we look at 3IATLAS, we should not see the return of gods. We should see what we ourselves will become. A species that travels between the stars, a civilization that spreads through the galaxy, a lineage that carries the light of consciousness to distant worlds. This is our destiny, not because it was given to us by ancient astronauts, but because we will create it ourselves, step by step, generation by generation, reaching ever outward into the infinite dark. And so, as 3IATLAS fades from our telescopes, as it crosses the boundary of the heliopause and returns to interstellar space, we bid it farewell. We thank it for its brief visit, for the data it provided, for the questions it raised and the mysteries it solved. We acknowledge it as a fellow traveller through the cosmos, a piece of another world that came to say hello before continuing its billion-year journey. And we promise that the next time an interstellar visitor passes through our solar system, we will be ready. We will send spacecraft to greet it. We will study it up close. We will learn its secrets. And perhaps, in the distant future, we will catch one. We will capture an interstellar object and bring it into orbit around Earth, a fragment of another star system preserved in our own. We will build museums where people can see material from other worlds. We will inspire generations of young scientists to study the cosmos and unlock its mysteries. This is the legacy of 3IATLAS. Not ancient prophecy fulfilled, but human curiosity ignited. Not the return of gods, but the beginning of our own journey to the stars. The shadow that this comet casts is not one of doom or judgment, but one of infinite possibility. As you sit in the quiet dark contemplating what you have learned, know this. The universe is vast beyond human comprehension. There are more stars in the observable universe than grains of sand on all the beaches of Earth. Around those stars orbit trillions upon trillions of planets, and on some of those planets there may indeed be life, there may be intelligence, there may be civilizations far older and far more advanced than our own. But if such beings exist, they did not create us. They did not genetically engineer Homo sapiens to mine gold in ancient Africa. They did not carve their prophecies into Sumerian tablets. The story of humanity is our own, written by our ancestors in blood and sweat and tears, written in the ruins of ancient cities and the DNA sequences that define our species, written in the footprints on the moon and the rovers exploring Mars. We are not the property of cosmic masters. We are not slaves awaiting the return of our creators. We are free beings, products of evolution and chance, rising from the dust of dead stars to ask questions about our origins and our destiny. And that is more extraordinary, more profound, more beautiful than any conspiracy theory could ever be. 3IATLAS has come and gone. The Anunnaki did not return. The world did not end. Prophecy was not fulfilled. And yet something remarkable happened. For a few brief months we studied a visitor from another world. We learned from it. We grew in understanding. And in doing so we took another small step toward our own transformation into a spacefaring species. The next interstellar object is already on its way. Somewhere in the dark between the stars, another ancient wanderer is approaching our solar system. When it arrives, perhaps in a year, perhaps in a decade, we will be watching. We will track its trajectory, analyze its composition, and send our spacecraft to meet it. And each time we do, we will learn more about the universe that gave birth to us. The truth about 3IATLAS is not hidden in ancient prophecy or government cover-ups. It is written in its spectrum, in its orbit, in the laws of physics that govern its motion. And that truth, while perhaps less dramatic than tales of returning gods, is infinitely more beautiful, because it is real. The mystery remains, not the mystery of Nibiru or the Anunnaki, but the mystery of existence itself. Why is there something rather than nothing? How did the universe give rise to life and consciousness? Are we alone in contemplating these questions, or are there others out there looking up at their own skies, wondering if they too are the only ones? These mysteries will not be solved by reinterpreting ancient texts or searching for hidden meanings in conspiracy theories. They will be solved by science, by telescopes and spacecraft and patient observation, by mathematics and experimentation and rigorous skepticism, by standing on the shoulders of those who came before us and reaching just a little bit higher, seeing just a little bit farther. And so we return to where we began, in the silent darkness between the stars. A void so vast that light itself grows weary travelling through it. But now you understand that this darkness is not empty. It is filled with wanderers like 3IATLAS, fragments of distant worlds carrying messages across the cosmic ocean. They have been travelling for eons, and they will continue to travel for eons more. Some will pass through our solar system, others will miss us by light years, but all of them are part of the same story. The story of matter and energy evolving into ever more complex forms, the story of planets and stars and galaxies dancing through space and time, the story of the universe slowly awakening to its own existence. And we are part of that story, not as slaves of ancient astronauts, but as free agents, conscious beings capable of understanding our own origins and shaping our own destiny. The shadow of 3IATLAS has passed, but the light it revealed remains. The light of scientific understanding, of human curiosity, of our unending quest to know ourselves and our cosmos. That light will guide us forward as we continue our journey through the endless dark reaching toward the stars, not because we were commanded to by ancient gods, but because it is our nature to reach, to explore, to understand, to grow. This is who we are, this is what we have always been, and this is what we will become. The real story of 3IATLAS is not about the Anunnaki, it is about us. It is about the moment when we looked up at a visitor from another world and saw, not ancient prophecy fulfilled, but the future that awaits us. A future among the stars, a future we will create ourselves. Step by step, and by generation, until one day our own descendants will travel between the stars as easily as 3IATLAS has done. And when they pass through alien solar systems, perhaps there will be beings on those distant worlds who will look up and wonder if they too are being visited by gods. But our descendants will not be gods. They will be human, the inheritors of a legacy that stretches back 4 billion years to the first molecules that learned to replicate themselves in Earth's primordial oceans. They will carry with them the hopes and dreams of every human who ever lived, every ancestor who struggled and survived and passed their genes forward to the next generation. And they will know that they achieved this not because ancient astronauts gave them technology, but because their ancestors refused to stop questioning, refused to stop exploring, refused to accept that the Earth was all there was. The arrival and departure of 3IATLAS will be remembered not as the return of gods, but as one more step in humanity's long journey toward understanding our place in the cosmos. One more data point in our quest to answer the fundamental questions. One more reason to look up at the night sky with wonder and curiosity. The universe is vast and ancient and full of mysteries, but those mysteries are not supernatural. They are natural, and they are waiting for us to solve them. If you have come this far and enjoyed the video, perhaps a gentle like and subscribe to the channel would be a wonderful way to support us. I'd appreciate your kind support. If you kindly let us know where we can improve or do better, please do let us know in the comments. For more videos like these, please do check out our latest videos as well. Till then, see you in the next one.